So Castle Panic is a cooperative board game for 1 to 6 players ages 8 and up, the goal of which is to keep this castle safe from all these monsters in the forest that want to destroy it. Let's go ahead and get you started on setup, and then we'll start talking about how to play the game. Let's start by building the castle. You'll put all 6 towers in the middle of the castle space, and you'll put your walls on this line between the swordsman and the castle ring. The next step is to prepare your monsters. From the monster pile, you'll want to pull 3 goblins, 2 orcs, and 1 troll, and we'll put those out on the board. Put 1 monster in each of the arcs in the archer ring, and make sure its biggest number is pointed at the castle. It doesn't matter which monster goes where, you just want to make sure you have 1 monster in each of these arcs to start the game. Mix up the rest of the monsters face down to make a new monster draw pile, and keep that next to the board. Put the 2 fortify tokens, the tar token, and the die nearby for all the players to use. You'll want to give every person playing one of the 6 order of play cards that are in the game, and you can go ahead and return any extras you have back to the box. You won't be needing those. Then give the deck of cards a shuffle and deal every player a hand. Hand size will change depending on the number of players that are in the game, and we'll put a graphic from the rules up here for you to see that, but for most games it's usually going to be right around 5 cards. Before we go further, let's take a moment to talk about the board and how it's organized. It's divided into colors, arcs, and rings. The colors are red, green, and blue, and then the arcs are these numbered sections around the board that are cut like pie slices. For example, that's arc number 4. Lastly, they're all subdivided into rings, the innermost ring being the castle ring, then the swordsman ring, knight ring, archer ring, and furthest out is the forest ring. Now, you can't attack monsters in the forest ring, but it's where new monsters will be placed. Once they move forward, then we can start using cards to defend our castle against them. There's 3 types of cards you'll use in Castle Panic to fight the monsters: hit, special, and resource. Each card has its name in the bottom left corner so you can tell them apart, and they look a little different. But let's go ahead and take a look at hit cards since you're going to use them the most. When you play a hit card, you use it to attack a monster in whatever color and ring it's in. For example, this green archer only works in the green archer section. When you play a hit card, you can hit any monster, any single monster in that area. So I can choose between this troll or this orc and do 1 point of damage for every card played. When you damage a monster, you rotate it so that its current health is pointed at the middle of the castle to show it's been injured. Other cards you'll be able to play on your turn as long as monsters match those spaces. So over here I have a blue knight. This has a 1-point goblin. When we hit him, he has no more health. He's removed from the game. I also have a red swordsman, which works great because we have an orc and the red swordsman. We'll damage him for 1, and then we'll get to the last 2 of the hit cards. A hero card is kind of like a wild card. It can be used for any area in its color. Since this is a red hero, we'll use it to hit this guy and finish him off, so he's out. And the last one you'll see is an any color card. This means it's a card that works in any color of its designated ring, in this case the knight ring. Now there are no monsters in the knight ring, so I can't use this card on my turn, but I can save it for later. The next type of card is the special card, and they're just that, special. You'll want to read the instructions to see what they do, but they all have an awesome power in the game. In this case, we've got Fortify Wall. When you play this card, you get to put the Fortify token on any wall you choose to make it safe from monsters. This one here, Drive Him Back, is another really good one. Lets you shove a monster all the way back into the forest, keeping the castle safe. You'll want to read the instructions on all of them when they come up, because special cards are a great way to stay alive in the game. There are only 2 resource cards in the game, Brick and Mortar. If you can play those at the same time, you can rebuild a wall that's been destroyed. Now, you can't rebuild a tower, it's only good for walls. Okay, let's get started on playing the game. First up, every player is going to go through this order of play on their turn, all 6 steps in this order. We start with step number 1, which is drawing up. This is where you want to draw up to a full hand, and because we just started the game, everyone's already at a full hand. But later on your next turn, this would be where you draw back up to your full hand size. Step 2 is discard and draw. Now this is an optional step, but it's a really good one to kind of keep things moving. If you have a card in front of you that you just don't want or isn't going to be playable right now, you can discard it and get another card to replace it. So step 3 is to trade cards. This is an optional step you don't have to do if you don't want to, but it's a really good way to start planning ahead. There are a couple of rules to it. Normally I can only trade 1 card with 1 other player, but in a 6-player game you actually get 2 trades, and that can be 2 trades with the same player or 1 trade with 2 different players. Either way, the big rule is it has to be a 1-for-1 trade. I can't take a card from someone who doesn't have any cards, and I can't give if I don't have any. Because right now I'm looking at the board, I know there are no blue knights, which I have a card for, but there are monsters in the red archer zone. So I'm going to offer a trade to this player. We're going to swap cards, and now I'm ready to start playing cards. That brings us to the play cards phase, step 4 of your turn, which is pretty good because this is where we're going to play cards to fight these monsters and keep the castle safe. Now you can play every card in your hand as long as it either hits a monster or fulfills its function. To demonstrate, let me get started with my green archer over here. It's going to let me hit either monster in this green colored archer ring. I'm going to hit this troll because he has way too many health points. I dialed him down and then I discard the archer card. I also have a red archer that I traded for, and back here I've got this 1-point goblin. We're going to get rid of him entirely and then discard the archer card. Following that up, I have a Fortify Wall special card. That's going to let me hang the Fortify token over any wall I want, bunkering it up, and I like that wall. And then my last 2 cards are Brick and Mortar. Now these are great cards because they'd let me rebuild a wall if it was destroyed, but we have all our walls, so I can't really use it this turn. It's not really a problem. Later on, I may be able to trade for these, and also I might be able to build a wall on another turn. So I'm just going to hang on to these, but having played all my cards, that ends my play cards phase. The next step is step 5, moving monsters. Here's where it starts to get bad. All the monsters that are still alive on the board will move 1 space closer to the castle. Now, in this case, nothing's hit the walls or towers, but if they were closer, for example, if this troll were in the swordsman ring and it was time for him to move, well, first he'd hit this Fortify token. And the rule is, whenever a monster hits any part of the castle, they take a point of damage and destroy whatever structure they hit. So he would destroy our Fortify token and dial down by 1 point. If, on a future turn, he was now going to move into an unfortified wall, he would destroy the wall, and then he would take his last point of damage and be destroyed. Let's imagine, though, that his friend was here, who still had 2 points, and it was his turn to move, and there's no wall. Well, now when he moves, he'll destroy a tower and move into the castle space, dialing down by 1 point because he's been damaged. From here on out, he's going to move clockwise around the castle, still taking a point of damage, so his movement would be to move over 1 space, destroy the tower, but be destroyed. The tricky part is, once they're in the castle, they ignore walls entirely, and there's only 3 cards that can stop them in the game. In the event that more than 1 monster hits the wall at the same time, we use the same rules with a slight difference. In this case, the wall is still destroyed, and the players will pick which monster they want to take the damage. Let's say we choose this orc and we dial him down by 1. If on the next turn we still haven't rebuilt the wall and they move into the tower, both monsters will still enter the space with the tower. Tower is destroyed, and again we choose which monster takes the damage. In this case, let's assign it to the orc, which finishes him off. The other monster is, however, inside our castle and at whatever health he was when he left the swordsman ring. The last phase of every player's turn is the draw 2 new monsters phase. I know it's not our favorite, but you have to do it. You'll draw 2 monsters at random from the pile and flip them over one at a time, resolving each one as you draw them. So for example, here I have pulled a monsters in red move 1. That means it's not a monster, it's a monster effect. Everything in the red arc just moves again. That one gets discarded, and my next one I picked was a troll. Now when it's a regular monster, you'll roll the die. I got a 6, which means I will put him in arc 6 in the forest. That's how monsters spawn in. Again, I'm making sure that his most powerful number is pointed towards the castle. That's how monsters spawn in. There's a lot of other things you'll see, so let's take a look at some of the other monsters and effects you might draw. There are 4 boss monsters you'll encounter in Castle Panic as well. When these are drawn, you'll place them on the board by a die roll, but then they all have a special effect. You can identify the boss monsters by their dark blue backgrounds and their yellow health points. Briefly, what they do is, the Goblin King forces you to draw 3 more tokens. The Troll Mage moves every monster on the board, including himself, 1 more time. The Orc Warlord moves every monster, including himself, that's in the same color that he is, 1 more time. And the Healer heals all damaged monsters for 1 point. In case you need a reminder, their rules are printed on the side of the board. There are also monster effect tokens you'll draw. You can recognize these by this bone border they have, and they do all sorts of terrible things. Here's one, for example, that makes you draw more monster tokens. We've got one that will simply force all players to discard 1 card. We've got one like we showed a minute ago that's going to move all the monsters in 1 color 1 more space closer. Then we've got monsters move clockwise or counterclockwise. This will keep the monster in the same ring, but it will slide them over 1 direction. Definitely easy to mess up your plans. And then of course there's a plague. This will force players to lose hit cards of a certain type. And then last but not least is the giant boulder. Let's take a look at how he works. When you draw a giant boulder, it doesn't go on the board like a regular monster, it's an instant effect. Whatever arc you roll, that's where the boulder's going to appear, but it instantly smashes into the castle. The good news is it crushes all the monsters that were in its path. Those are gone, completely destroyed, but it doesn't stop until it hits some part of the castle. In this scenario, it would hit the wall and that would be the end of it. However, if we roll the giant boulder now, it would keep going until it hit and destroyed this tower. If we got another giant boulder on 3 again, it would keep going until it hits something in the castle, meaning it's gone through and out the other side, destroying this tower. Another boulder later on that arc would take out the wall. And yes, if possible, you got another boulder, it would now go all the way through, continuing all the way across. The good news being it would destroy all the monsters on the other side and just slide right out the edge of the board. Monsters are bad, boulders are worse. Once you've drawn and resolved 2 monster tokens, that's the end of your turn. The next player would now start at the beginning, drawing up in case they were down, back up to a full hand size, and then they'd go through all 6 phases of their turn. This is going to continue until one of 2 things happen. Either all the towers are destroyed and players have lost the game. Walls don't matter, towers are like your life points. However, if we can destroy all the monsters, not just put them on the board, but actually defeat them, and we have at least 1 tower left, the players will win the game. So that's what you want to go for here as your final victory condition. So what we just took a look at is the standard version of Castle Panic, where it's fully cooperative and you're all on the same side. There are 4 different ways to play the game though. One of the other variations is what we call Master Slayer. In that one, when you defeat a monster and get it down to 0, you keep it like a trophy, and at the end of the game, if you've survived, everyone adds up their monsters in their trophy pile by their highest health points, and whoever has the most points is the winner, sort of an MVP version. That lets you be a little bit competitive in a cooperative game. Another version that I particularly enjoy is Overlord. In that version, one player isn't playing as a castle defender, they instead have a hand of monster tokens and they are the monster overlord. They will put monsters onto the board by their own rule set, trying to destroy the castle while everyone else works against them. Lastly, a very popular version is Solitaire. The game plays great by yourself as you make your last stand against all these monsters all by yourself. Those variations I just described are covered in detail in the back of the rulebook, along with some variations to make the game either a little easier or a little harder depending on what you're looking for. We also have quite a few expansions that are out there if you want to go deeper in the world of Castle Panic, as well as if you'd like to play with preschoolers, we have My First Castle Panic, which is a game for players 4 and up, gives you a taste of castle defending, but it's all done with shapes and colors, no reading required. So look into that if you're interested. Otherwise, we hope you all have a great time and good luck defending the castle.